Hello everyone, welcome to the new series of Drishti IAS. I am Ritu and today we are going to discuss an important topic of environment as well as economy, which is COP28, and what are the India's goal for the COP28. And in this lecture we are going to discuss that what are the climatic goals we have. Before moving to the points of discussion, you already know that COP28 is ongoing in Dubai and our Prime Minister Narendra Modi had also reached there to visit that summit, and he had also attended that summit. But after that we have seen that there was so many agreement and disagreement in the COP28 summit, and India has agreed on few points. On the other hand, India has also disagreed on few points because it was not suiting the climatic condition and economic condition of India. So that's why this particular lecture has been designed. And we are fortunate enough that we are living into this beautiful planet. We have fresh air to breathe, we have land to live. But don't you think that such things should be sustained for the future generation? So we need to develop the sustainable environment and sustainable economy. So moving to the points of discussion part. First of all, we are going to discuss the news, and then we are going to discuss that can India hold on to the coal and meet climate goals, and then India calls for climate equity. We will discuss that what is this climate equity on loss and damage fund. So we are also going to discuss that what is loss and damage fund, practice question for prelims and mains. So moving to the news part. So we already know that in Dubai such kind of summits are taking place, and our Prime Minister had also visited to the summit, and there is a new provision into that summit, and the name of that new provision is GST, which is Global Stock Take. And what is this Global Stock Take? So Global Stock Take is the review of the 8 years which we had decided that in the Paris climate change, and we are going to review that what the countries has and what overall the world has achieved so far in last 8 years. And in the Paris climate change, we already know that we had decided to reduce the emission by 1.5 degrees Celsius throughout the century. So this is the news, and you already know that what is global stock take. So in prelims examination, when there will be the question related to it, then you must know the fact that it is the review of the 8 years, that what we have achieved and what are the performance we have done in the last 8 years. So moving to the next slide is about climate goals. So what are the India's climate goals we have? So first we will understand in the terms of new coal, as India's economy and so much energy power generation happened with the help of the coal, and due to the socio-economic reasons, coals are very important resources for the Indians. So what the goals we have decided? So the India had decided that we have to give a fair share to all developing countries in the global carbon budget. So in G20 summit also we have seen that India has emerged as a voices for the global south, and in COP28 also India has advocated the rights of the least developed countries and also the developing countries, and it had said that whatever the criteria and parameters decided by the developed country, it should not be agreed by the least developed countries and developing countries, because their socio-economic climatic differences are very different from the developed countries. They have a different kind of economic demands, and similarly in case of India also we cannot completely boycott the coal and our dependency on the coal, because our economy is based on the coal and so many lives and livelihoods are dependent on the coals, and coals are still used for the power generation. So that's why we cannot agree to the meetings and what are the bulletins related to the decarbonization. And India had also voiced for all those countries who had not agreed to such kind of things of decarbonization, because in which so much developed countries has a say. So being a democratic space, we have to take care of that what the developing countries and what the least developed countries want, and why they are not agreed to such kind of the goals which are set by the developed countries. So this is the new coal thing for the India. Moving to the next slide is about the new renewables. So India has a different plans and goals for the new renewables, and among them is that the nation plans to increase the share of electricity with the help of solar and wind power to 35% by 2030. So you need to remember such kind of the goals, because in the prelims examination they might give you such statements, and up from 10.6% to 2022. So we are going to increase our dependency on solar and wind, because these are the natural resources and very eco-friendly and environment friendly also. So it will be increased by 10% to 35%, and it also aims to share its capacity generation, and they will also try to generate non-fossil fuel energy from 43% to 50% by 2030. So whatever the targets we have decided, it is after 7 or 8 years, and India has decided target according to its economic needs and socio-cultural phenomena. So, and India had also not agreed to the triple generation and triple funding of the renewable energy. So these are the goals India have, and India had not agreed to the all points which has been decided in the COP28 because it was not suiting to the India's economic condition. So moving to the next slide, we have this mismatch metrics in all over the world also, because every country has had a different parameters to measure the emissions, and India has a different parameters to measure the emission, and because of that there is a mismatch matrix, and we could not reach to a common conclusion where we could decide that okay, this thing is a parameter and where each country would contribute. So India measures its climate actions using emission intensity, and here we use and measure emission intensity per capita of the GDP. So here GDP plays an important role to measure our emissions report, and you already know that India had decided that 2070 would be the year where we will achieve the zero emission target. So many of the developed countries have decided 2050, but India has decided 2070 because it has a different goals and it has a different socio-economic and political problems, and because of that it could not rely to an unrealistic goal. So that's why it has decided 2070, and it has also decided that it will cut emission 45% by 2005 level by 2030. So most of our goals are decided after this decade, so we have to be very careful here. And India had also watched for the various developing countries, and it has says that most of the developing countries and least developed countries does not emit such kind of the pollution, and developed countries emit huge amount of the pollution. So there should not be equity formula for them, and those countries who are emitting large amount of emissions, they had to contribute a lot to such kind of the climatic finance. On the other hand, the least developed countries and developing countries has a different kind of their economic problem, so they cannot equally contribute to the climatic finance which has been decided by the COP28 meeting. So moving to the next slide, which is about can India hold on to coal and meet climate goals. So we have a different kind of national determined contribution, and India has a 8 national determined contributions, and it has decided that it will place to have 50% of cumulative electric power by 2030. So this is the India's goal. However, there are certain challenges in India's goal, and because our whatever the economy is based on the coal, and we cannot completely phase out the coal dependency. It means that there is a we will try to reduce our dependency on the coal, but we cannot completely phase out. So this is the challenge in front of India. On the other hand, we have a democratic setup. So this time in the presidency or in the prime ministership of the Narendra Modi, we had decided 2070 as an emission target. But maybe after 4 or 5 years, the government will change, their target will change, and different states had a different kind of targets. Their socio-economic problems are different, and we are a vast economy, we are a vast population. So being most populous country, we have certain kind of challenges which are hindering us to reach our goals. So this is one of the challenges, that we cannot completely reduce our dependency on the natural on such kind of things, because such coal and everything emits so much of the pollution also. And by burning less amount of the coal, we are also trying to restore carbon in our environment also. So India is trying to some homogeneous method and homemade method which are very friendly for the environment and also the cost friendly, but they are not enough to fulfill our target. So we have to also look for the other problems and nitty-gritties, that how we can achieve our target. And India also didn't join the 118 countries who had signed the renewable and energy efficiency pledge. So we already had discussed that India had not agreed to the renewable pledges which is decided by the developed countries. Moving to the next slide, which is India calls for climate equity on loss and damage. So what is this climate equity? So climate equity is that most of the time we have seen that developed countries emit lots of pollutions, and because of that the developing countries and least developed countries had to also face. So India had advocated that if we are not emitting large amount of the pollution, and if developed countries emitting large of the pollution, then why their cost would be beared by us? It means developing countries and least developed country. So it had asked for the equity. So this is the phenomena of equity. And India also said that there should not be unequal distribution of resources. It means that suppose that if any economy size is very less, then you cannot ask to that country that you have to contribute to 1 billion or 2 billion, because their economy could not provide that and could not afford that. So it had asked that there should not be unequal distribution of the emissions target. And here we will also discuss the loss and damage fund. So what is this loss and damage fund? So this formula has been initiated by the developed country. It means that 15 developed countries had decided that they will fund the least developed countries in their climate finance and to reach their emissions target. So this is the loss and damage fund. But India has not agreed to give financial assistance to loss and damage fund, because India has a own kind of the challenges. And it has been also said that loss and damages fund does not give the power and voices to the least developed countries and developing countries. So India has also reluctant to such kind of the targets. So moving to the next slide, which is the practice question for prelims, and this question is related to the loss and damage fund. And the first question is, it aims to provide financial assistance to poorer nations that have been hit by climate related disaster. And your second statement is India had agreed to financially contribute to it, and here they are asking the correct statement. So we already had discussed the what are the nitties-gritties of loss and damage fund, so you can answer it easily. Moving to the next slide. Next slide is about the operationalization of loss and damage fund is the biggest takeaway so far analyzed. So what you have to do, that you have to first define that what is loss and damage fund and when it has been initiated. So it has been initiated in COP27, and who are the countries who are contributing and funding to the loss and damage fund. And you have to also mention here that India had not agreed to finance loss and damage fund. And then here comes to the main demand of the question, that operationalization of loss and damage fund. So it has been decided in COP27, which has been unanimously decided by all the countries, but it came into operation in COP28. So do you think that it can bring revolutionary step in the field of climate change or in the field of climate finance? So yes, it can, but here what we have seen, that you can write about the advantages by introducing loss and damage fund, and it can help to the developing countries. It can help to the countries which are hit by the natural disaster, which are hit by the climatic repercussion. So in that way, that can be very useful. But you have to also analyze that in actual sense, the developed countries are spreading so much of the pollution. So it's their responsibility to do such kind of the things. On the other hand, loss and damage fund has been not agreed by many countries, and it is just 15 developed countries. It means that whatever the funds it has been generated, it is just generated by 15 countries, and they will not listen to other developed countries and developing countries because they are not financially contributing to it, and the least developed countries does not have say in it. On the other hand, it has been decided that World Bank will manage such kind of the funds, but so many countries had critical about it, and they had said that a separate institution should be made for this, so that there should be more fair distribution to everyone. So that's it for today's lecture. I hope you like this lecture. If you have any queries to this lecture, kindly ask in the comment section. Thank you.